at the University of Cambridge, which is a fellowship which is awarded in partnership with the James Curry Society. So the current director of the James Curry Society, she's a lady called Charmaine Mujeri. She lives in Harare. She actually invited me for a speaking engagement. Right, she's big in the arts and culture circuit in Zimbabwe. Now, for many years, I've wanted to visit Zimbabwe. Right from when I was in university, which is like 15 years ago now, I had lots of Zimbabwean friends at university because the UK has a sizable Zimbabwe diaspora population. So some of them are still my very close friends to date. The first time I ever fell in love in 2011 was with a Zimbabwean lady from a town called Kwekwe. So I've wanted to visit Zimbabwe for the longest time, but I've never had a reason to go there. So this was like the perfect excuse, right? And it just so happened that a few days afterward, I had another event, this time in Cape Town, the Africa Liberty Forum. So the idea I had in my mind was, okay, attend this event in Harare, and then spend a few days, exploring Zimbabwe. I wanted to go to what's it called, Victoria Falls. My good friend Wademaya, he's a YouTuber. I think he's Africa's biggest YouTuber actually. He actually made me want to do this because he went bungee jumping at Victoria Falls. So like I wanted to do that. So the idea was I go to Zimbabwe, spend a few days there, explore the local tourism, and then hop on to South Africa, to Cape Town, before heading back to Europe. That was the idea. Now, I called the Zimbabwean embassy ahead of time because I wanted to be sure that there wasn't going to be any issues because of the passport that I used. So, I mean, it's safe to talk about this now since it's already in the public domain. So it's not a secret. Ever since I left Nigeria in 2020, I haven't used a Nigerian passport. So currently, my primary travel document is a Ghanaian refugee passport. After I claimed political asylum in Ghana, after I was awarded political asylum in Ghana. So depending on the jurisdiction one is traveling to, some jurisdictions recognize that document as a Ghanaian passport. So, for example, every time I travel to the UK, where I have what's it called, entry clearance, I'm classified as a Ghanaian. So even on my UK visa, the visa field always has the term Ghanaian. So I'm not classified as a Nigerian. On in the UK and in the EU, they classify me as a Ghanaian. Within Africa, it's a bit different. There's always a bit of, because African jurisdictions, as I've come to understand, a lot of them don't really understand international law regarding refugee passports. So in some places, you're recognized as a Ghanaian citizen, you can pass through. In some other places, you're not. So I called ahead of time. I called the Ghanaian embassy in Accra because I was traveling through Accra. So I called them and I asked, this was like 2 days before my flight, and I asked, is it okay? Like, this is the document I'm traveling with. It's a Ghanaian travel document. The nationality field inside the document says Nigerian, but it's a Ghanaian document issued by the government of Ghana. Am I classified as a Ghanaian or a Nigerian? Because I know if you're classified as a Nigerian, you need a visa. If you're classified as a Ghanaian, Ghana is visa free. That's why I called. And the lady at the embassy told me it depends on the airline. That if the airline is willing to let you board, and if the airline recognizes you as a Ghanaian by virtue of a Ghanaian passport, we don't have a problem. We'll let you in. It's not an issue. If the airline doesn't board you, then you need a visa. That's what I was told. So I booked my ticket. It was Ethiopian Airlines. So the route was Accra, Addis, Harare, right? And by the way, they actually made me even buy. They made me buy a return ticket. So because I was thinking I'll just buy a one-way ticket because from there I'm going to Cape Town. I had my return ticket from Cape Town, so from Cape Town I'm going back to the UK. That's what. But they made me buy a return ticket to Accra instead. So I had to spend like 1,200 USD. So anyway, I did that. I got to Addis. There was no problem. I boarded my flight to Harare. It was an Airbus A350 Ethiopian. We landed in Harare, and then the problems began. So what I noticed was that all the other foreigners, well, most of the other foreigners on the flight, so the Chinese, for example, there are three queues. So there's a queue for Zimbabwean and SADC passport holders. That's the queue in the middle. Those ones have no problem, obviously. There's a queue for other nationalities. There's a queue for visitors and there's a queue for other nationalities. Now the Chinese who were coming in as other nationalities, they weren't even filling in their landing cards. They weren't filling in anything. They just empty landing card, put it inside their passport, and then there's $300 cash inside the passport. And they hand it over to the lady in the booth, and then she scrolls something on the landing card. She gives them back their passport. They pass through, no problem.
Wait. Is that the fee or bribe?
No, it's a bribe. There is no fee. It's a bribe, right? Now, my mistake apparently was that when I was in Addis, I didn't withdraw money. I didn't. I don't like traveling with large amounts of cash on me. I just use my. I just have my card. If I need money, I'll withdraw it, right? Because there will always be an ATM machine anywhere in the world. Apparently, that was a mistake. Apparently, I should have withdrawn money when I was in Addis. So I didn't. I think I had like maybe like 2,000 Ethiopian birr with me, which is not a lot of money anyway. And I don't think they accept Ethiopian birr in Zimbabwe anyway. So I didn't really have any money with me. So the guy who was looking through my landing card then asked me if he asked me for $300. I didn't have it. That was where the problem began. So then he asked me, okay, I told him, look, if you can get me to an ATM, I can withdraw $300. It's not a problem. Like I'm not because I know I'm in your country, so it's not my place to start fighting and say no. I'm not going to pay a bribe. This is not the place to do a luta continua. I understand how Africa works. I'll give you $300 if I can get me to an ATM. But unfortunately, in that arrival area, there was no ATM. So he at first said, okay, he will find a way to get me through. And then maybe he asked me, are you going to give us any trouble? I said, no, I'm not going to give you any trouble. He said, okay. And then he disappeared. And I was waiting and waiting. And eventually I got tired of waiting. So I went to the lady at the booth and I explained my situation to her that I don't know what's going on. And then she asked for my passport. I gave her the passport. And she goes, oh, you're Nigerian. I said, well, I mean, it's a Ghanaian travel document. And the airline had no problem. Everything the Zimbabwean embassy told me is what I told her. I haven't done anything wrong, so I don't see any need to tell you lies or to hide anything. So I just told her what I had been told. She says, "Oh no, you're Nigerian, so you need a visa, so you're here illegally. So we're going to refuse you entry." And I'm like, "What is going on? Why are you doing this?" And she just wasn't having it. So then they stamp a refusal thing into my passport, and then they take me to the Ethiopian Airlines office and make them my return flight, which I had bought already. They made them change the date to that night that I'm leaving the country immediately, and then they took me into that room that you saw on Twitter, that detention room. I basically just forgot about me. So I was there. This was around 2 p.m. local time when all of this happened, between 2 and like 2:30 p.m. By the time I sent out that tweet, it was like 8 p.m. or 8:30 p.m. local time. So I literally just been in there and they're just forgotten about me. I hadn't heard anything. I just, it's like that. Even the airport noise was even going down because everybody was going home. So the people who had taken me in there, I think they had even ended their shift and gone home. And I had tried speaking I had called friends, I had done everything. Nothing was moving. Nothing was happening. So eventually, like my final last card, Hail Mary SOS move was to put out a tweet that this is what is happening to me. I don't know why this is happening, but please, if there's anyone out there, please, like, I just want, at this point, I'd given up on attending my speaking engagements in Zimbabwe. I just want to get on my flight and leave this place, right? Because I've been around Africa enough to know when the situation isn't looking good for you, and the best thing for you to do is to get out of there as quickly as possible. And it turned out that tweet was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made, because as I later came to find out from someone who is in the know, they had apparently gotten into contact with the Nigerian High Commission. I don't know why they did that, because I traveled into the country on a Ghanaian passport. They should have gotten into contact with the Ghanaian High Commission. Instead, they got into contact with the Nigerian High Commission. Obviously, the Nigerians will definitely know who I am. And apparently, there was a conversation that was being had. Now, the problem was because first of all, I traveled on a Ghanaian passport. So there's no basis to return me to Nigeria because I didn't travel with a Nigerian passport. And then secondly, I'm internationally, I'm classified as a refugee. So it violates international law, the law of refoulement, to return someone to a country that they ran away from as a refugee. Right? It's a violation of international law. However, the Zimbabweans, don't forget, are already under international sanctions. So they don't really care about international law that much. So apparently there was a conversation that was being had. It was a 50-50 thing. Right? There was actually a conversation that was being had about whether or not to hand me over to the Nigerian High Commission. I think that's why they kind of forgot me in there, because there was a conversation that was going on. So it was like, let's talk first before we attend to him. So I think I kind of forced their hand by sending out that message, and then they started getting all sorts of international pressure. And then it was like, okay, oh, please, okay, we don't want any, yeah, carry your kayak and be going. So that's pretty much how it was. So then I had to fly to Accra. So I flew through Addis first. They wouldn't give me back my passport until I got all the way to Accra. That was when I eventually got my passport, and then from there I was able to go back to base. So that's pretty much what happened. But for me, the big takeaway in all of that was the response afterward from the Zimbabwean government, from George Charamba, the information minister, and Nick Mangwana, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Information, made it very clear that they obviously knew who I was, first of all. They clearly knew who I was, and they were under the impression, or they are under the impression, that I came into Zimbabwe to do work, and they're scared because this is their election season. The election it's like 2 weeks from now, and they also know that there there's a journalist in Zimbabwe. His name is Hopewell Chinono. He's like he's a huge he's a huge thorn in their side. He's a huge pain. In fact, they've put him in prison multiple times. And we're friends. So, and it's not a secret that we're friends. So I think they'd have dug into these things, and they'd have added two and two to get 22. And then they'd have said, okay, this one is coming to collaborate with Hopewell. Maybe he wants to do Al Jazeera Gold Mafia episode 5 or something. Maybe that's what they thought. It's clear because the information minister later came out and said he accused me of being a foreign spy, agent of regime change, said I'm Western sponsored, all that kind of stuff. And then Nick Mangwana later put out a statement saying that as Zimbabwe goes into their elections, that foreign journalists who are coming into the country to work shouldn't come in as tourists, but they should make sure they get a work visa. And it was obviously he was referring to me because they genuinely believe, they are so paranoid and neurotic, they genuinely believe that I was coming into the country to carry out an investigation, to work on a story. Meanwhile, it was a speaking engagement that took me there. That's the only reason I would get, like, with all due respect to Zimbabwe, I think I'm so occupied with West Africa that even if there was a story in Zimbabwe, it wouldn't be me that would do it. If even if I got to find out something top secret, at best I would look for a local Zimbabwean journalist and hand it over to them, or a South African journalist. Let them handle it. What's my problem in Zimbabwe? I'm not from Southern Africa. I'm from Nigeria. You understand? My platform is called West Africa Weekly. There's a reason for that. I don't even the furthest that my scope has ever reached is Cameroon, which technically is in Central Africa, but it shares a border with Nigeria. That's why I don't go beyond my sphere of influence. So what am I? If I was looking for a story, what the hell would I be doing in Zimbabwe? But they genuinely believe that I came there to cause trouble for them. So, and it was just a shame because as a result of that, even my planned appearance at Africa Liberty Forum in Cape Town didn't end up happening because that was an ordeal. And well, hopefully one day we will get to the point in Africa where um, even if the whole of Africa isn't visa free to the whole of Africa, but at the very least, it will be possible to arrive at an African airport and get a visa on arrival. Because I just think it's insane how difficult it is to travel. And then you are seeing Chinese people who don't even come from Africa, and they are just putting $300 in their passport, and they are walking through all willy nilly. It's extremely frustrating. But well, that's the continent we have for now.